Welcome to the Q1 Buck Pull. I'm Tim Hart with Mike Big Buck Hoffner. Well, we've got some of the prizes with us here today. A 50 caliber CVA muzzleloader. It's an Optima with a scope and a case. You've got some arrows from Carbon Express.
And the Hunter Mayhems, Tim, they're just awesome arrows. The gun is awesome, man. We're ready to go. We got to get the season ripping and rolling.
That's exactly right. Well, on today's show, we're going to be talking to the DNR. In particular, we're going to the MSU Diagnostic Lab. We're going to talk to Steve Schmidt. And what role does the lab play in deer management in the state of Michigan?
I'll tell you what, it's pretty scientific. I mean, just like managing a herd and managing your livestock, there's a lot that goes into wildlife management as well.
Not only that, but we're also going to be talking to Jimmy Gretzinger from Michigan Out of Doors TV. We're going to be featured on their show various times throughout the year with our Big Buck Pull update, and he is also going to be sending us footage. So we're going to kind of work with Michigan Out of Doors TV again this year, and he's on our show. Then we also are going to be talking to Kevin Eves from Eves Taxidermy, and Kevin's going to talk about the proper way to field dress a deer, especially if you're going to take it to a taxidermist to get it mounted.
Yep, it's a once-in-a-lifetime buck. You don't want to screw it up, so field dressing it properly is the way to go. So let's get moving, Tim.
We got some big bucks on today's show, so stay with us. You're watching the Q1 Buck Pull.
Q1 Buck Pull, Michigan's biggest and best buck pull contest. Brought to you by these sponsors who support Michigan's great outdoors.
Back here on the Q1 Buck Pull, well, it is time for some of the bucks that have been entered into the Q1 Buck Pull. You can see them all online at q1buckpull.com, but here's some of the entries from this week.
All right, just a taste, Tim. Let's start out with Corey Donner, bringing in a 10-pointer with an inside spread of 14.5 inches. His total score was 42.5. He comes from the South Central Michigan region out of Coldwater. Then we had Aaron Mainprize with an 8-pointer. His inside spread was 16.25 inches. The score, 38.5 points. He comes from the Mid-Michigan region from the city of St. Charles. Then we had Caleb Vadenbach with a 10-pointer with an inside spread of 12.38 inches. His score was 37.12. Comes from the South Mid-Michigan region from the city of West Olive.
Now let's bring in Steve Schmidt from the DNR. He's going to be talking about the role that the MSU Diagnostic Plan plays in the deer management plan all across the state. Well, we're on the MSU lab. I've got Steve Schmidt with us. He's a wildlife veterinarian. And Steve, we are going to be talking about aging and some of the different processes. But what lab are we in today, and what are we going to accomplish here?
Okay, we do a number of things, Tim, that help manage wildlife populations in the state of Michigan. One of the first things, of course, we're called a Wildlife Health Lab, Wildlife Disease Lab, is we monitor and do surveillance for wildlife diseases that affect Michigan wildlife. This could be bovine tuberculosis that we have on our free-ranging deer herd in northeastern Michigan, chronic wasting disease. We're always on the lookout for that. It's almost like a terrorist attack in a way. We have to be sure that we try to get it as early as possible. There's diseases such as episodic hemorrhagic disease, a disease that kills deer very quickly. And we've had outbreaks, 5 out of the last 6 years. The preceding 50 years, we only had 2 cases. This is a disease that causes hemorrhage of animals, and you can have a relatively large number of animals die in a small area. Small area mean, you know, a one drainage or one county. And the numbers dying could be in the hundreds. So it's not going to affect the deer population in a large area, but in the local area it could cause a problem for hunters. Other things that we do is collect biological information on animals that are hunted and trapped. This includes reproductive data, age data, and information on the sex of the animal. And this can go into a population model that gives us a population estimate for that species, and then also can be used to get an idea of how many animals we can harvest safely and still have a sustainable population. We do forensics work here. That's something that, like crime scene, CSI type stuff, and it's basically a murder case of a deer. Why did this deer die? And some of the people that post deer get pretty tricky. They'll shoot it with a rifle. and then they'll stick an arrow in that same wound. And we can determine which came first. Also, we've had them where they shoot it with a gun, a small caliber, say a .22, then they drag it out on the road and run over it with a car and then claim it was a roadkill. And again, we can tell the difference on that. But one of the things that we're going to be doing today in a little more detail is talking about the aging of certain animals such as bears and fur bearers, and we can do that by just extracting one tooth at the check station, send it down to the lab, and then we can take a cross section and count the annular ring just like we do on a tree. And Michelle Rosen, our technician here at the lab, is going to be talking about that in more detail.
We're at the DNR lab on the MSU campus. I've got Michelle Rosen with us. She's a lab technician. And so how does the DNR set trapping limits? Well, first of all, we're going to talk about bobcats because that's what you're doing right now. And explain to me how we use DNA to set the trapping limits.
Okay, well, first we have a typical clean bobcat skull. And when we pull a tooth, we pull one of the canines, which would be one of these bottom, actually, canine teeth here. When we pull it out, they kind of look like this. Sometimes they're really big, sometimes they're smaller. And we clean it and we take a small cross section of the tooth and we decalcify it, we stain it on a slide, and they typically look like this when they're all done and stained. And we use this and we look at a microscope to see the annuli, which look like tree rings, similar to tree rings, and we can age the bobcat that way. And that helps us know what the age structure of the harvest or trapping was this year. In addition to that, we can take some tissue, whether it be from the outside of the tooth or from the skull, and we can determine sex from that. And the reason that we do that is because it is the most accurate way to determine what sex the bobcat is, because out in the field, we usually get carcasses that are frozen. They're hard to tell if it's a male or female. And a lot of times they'll just get parts of the jaw or the head before, or the check stations will get the head, and you can't really tell if it's a male or female. So what we do is we extract DNA from it, we amplify the DNA so we can see it a lot more on what we call a gel, an agarose gel. And what happens is when we do that, we can take a picture and we see something like this on the screen. And these are just markers so we know how long the gene is that we're looking for. But these ones with the two bands here, these are male bobcat, and we know that because it has an X gene and the Y gene. On the flip side of that, we have females that only have the X and X gene, so we only see one band on here.
All right. And so then once you can determine, you know, the population or how many, you know, female or how many male bobcats were taken, at that point then you get with the other biologists and then kind of set up, you know, the trapping limits and what can be done for the year.
Right, so the data goes into a population model, and they can determine how many of what sex and what age class were harvested this year, and they use that information plus previous year harvest information to determine the quotas for the next years.
All right, so that's how you get your limits when it comes to trapping. Michelle Rosen here, lab technician at the DNR lab on the MSU campus. Time now for our sponsor spotlight here on the Q1 Buck Poll. We're in Morley, and I am at Frank's Sporting Goods, and we've got Vic Havens with us. Vic, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
Now, Vic, we're talking about long guns, all kinds of guns, hard to find ammo. Let's talk about selection here.
You know, that's the thing here at Frank's Sporting Goods. We're not a huge shop, you know, but we do have a nice selection of long guns. We got a nice selection of handguns here in the cabinet. You know, we pride ourselves for hard to find ammo. You know, the nice thing is here at Frank's Sporting Goods, if we don't have it in stock, we can get right on the internet. You know, we got a lot of suppliers. We can look it up right here at the front counter. I can special order it for you, and I can tell you when it's going to be in. You know, it's not like, all right, I'm just going to take your order and it should be here sometime this week. I can tell you because I already know when the order is going to be placed. I can see it's in stock and we're good to go. And
I found out that customer service obviously is top priority here. When you come into Frank's, they're going to talk to Vic.
That's right. I'm here. I'm here most of the time.
The other thing that you're known for is your trapping supplies.
That's right. You know, that's a passion of mine. You know, over the last 15, 18 years, I've run huge trap lines. I've taken off, you know, long periods of time from work. Ran 4 or 5 counties at a time. You know, a lot of times 300 to 500 traps out there at one time. So I've got the experience out there. It's a passion of mine. Guys want to come in here and talk to me. I'm willing to talk to them all the time. Love to talk about trapping, and it's not just because I've seen it on a video or we've done it somewhere. I've been out there hands-on in the field. I've put up numbers of raccoon. I've put up 400 coon in one year before. You know, I've had big numbers of fox. You know, guys, come on in and talk to me. I'd be happy to, you know, service you. If I don't have it here, which we've got one of the largest selections in West Michigan, I can get it for you.
And if you can't tell, he's got a lot of passion for your business, don't
I
you?
do. I love it. You know, this is a fun business. It's great. It's fun to be here every single day. It's not one of those factory jobs. I've been there. I've done that. I've been in management there. You know, here I wake up every day and have fun with the guys.
All right, and you can bring your bucks and dough here to Frank's and get them registered in the Q1 Buck Poll. Vic, anything else before we go, buddy?
That's it. I sure appreciate it and hope to see all the hunters this year.
All right, Vic Havens here at Frank's Sporting Goods in Morley. I'm Tim Hart, and you're watching the Q1 Buck Poll. Well, it's time to talk to one of our great friends here in the outdoors. That's Jimmy Gretzinger from Michigan Out of Doors TV. He's going to talk about his show, what plans they have coming up. But before we do that, we've got more big bucks on the Q1 Buck Poll.
All right, Tim, let's start out with Jim Harley Sr. with an 8-pointer with an inside spread of 15 1/4 inches. His score was 36 1/4 inches. He comes out of the thumb from Lapeer. Then we had Kyle Jakowitz with a 9-pointer, an inside spread at 11 1/4 inches, an overall score of 34 3/4 inches from the South Mid-Michigan region from Jackson. Then we had Grant Sadler with an 8-pointer with an inside spread of 13 inches. His overall score of 35 comes from the thumb out of the city of Decker.
And you know, Mike, we are getting bigger and bigger deer, but we want to remind people you can enter a buck or a doe in the contest, and you have equal opportunity to win muzzle loaders like this from CVA, an ATV from Custom Connection Motorsports in Battle Creek. So we got some great things that we're just going to give away at random.
Yeah, you know, it's been just the early part of the season, and already have a number of deer that have brought in. And actually, the hunting hasn't been that great because it's been so warm. But we're going to turn that corner. The weather's going to cool down, and we're going to bring in a lot more.
Let's bring in one of the great outdoorsmen here in the state of Michigan. Here's Jimmy Gretzinger. Well, it's always great to catch up with friends from around the state, especially guys like Jimmy Gretzinger from Michigan Out of Doors TV.
How you doing?
We caught up at DNR Sports Center over in Kalamazoo, and Jimmy, it's always great to work with you. And but you guys have been putting on one of the best shows for the outdoors, whether it's hunting or fishing or just nature. You've got a lot coming up this year, don't you?
Well, and that's the thing about Michigan Outdoors, that we're a little different than some of the other national shows, you know, because we do a little bit of everything. We're doing 52 shows a year, and like you said, you know, that hunting, fishing, trapping, the shooting sports, whatever it might be that's going on in Michigan's Out of Doors is what we want to try to cover, and that's why I think it's worked for so many years, because it's not a show about Jimmy Gretzinger. If it was, very few people would watch, but it's a show about Michigan. It's about Michigan sportsmen, and that's what, from Morton F. way back in the day up to, you know, those of us today, that's what the show's always been about, is the state of Michigan and its natural resources. So this time of the year, as we get into October, November, I mean, obviously deer is big in the state, deer is king, so we're going to be doing a lot of bow hunting. As we get into November, some deer hunting, and then, you know, the muzzleloader season. So we'll kind of be tracking through the deer season, but we're also going to be out doing some upland bird hunting in the UP. We're going to be doing some fall fishing from both sides of the lower, and we got some stuff planned for the UP. We got waterfall stuff going on. So there's just so much going on in September, October, November in the state of Michigan. You know, we have the same amount of content every week that we produce, but this time of year, there's so many things to choose from as a sportsman here in Michigan, and that's what we want to continue to do at Michigan Outdoors, just highlight what's going on here in the state.
Now, let me ask you this. If somebody has an event or an activity or something that they think is of interest, just give you a call or an email with the topic?
we get calls and emails all the time about different outdoor events that are coming up, and we want to try to promote as many of those as we can. Even if we can't be there, we'd be happy to say, hey, you know, there's such and such a banquet going on here, or there's such and such a, you know, concealed weapons carry course, whatever it might be. We want to promote whatever's going on in the out of doors, and we get a lot of stories that way too. We have people ask us all the time, well, how do you get the ideas for your stories? Well, sometimes it's stuff that we initiate. A lot of times it's people calling us saying, well, hey, we've got this great little honey hole for bluegills up here in Alpena County. Well, we want to come, you know, highlight that story. We want to, you know, whatever it might be. So yeah, phone and email is a great way to get a hold of us, and there's always great stories to be told here in the state.
And we're going to be featuring, you know, some of their past, you know, stories on our show, and we'll be, you know, sending you some stuff about the Q1 Buck Bowl. Here's some of the updates. Here's some of the big bucks. So people will be seeing that. And Jimmy, every Thursday night, I know you run throughout the week in different stations, but Thursday nights.
Yeah, Thursday nights are kind of our mainstay. We're on Thursday night everywhere across the state of Michigan, primetime Thursday night, and then again on Saturdays in most locations. We're also on in Northern Indiana, Northern Ohio, Northern Illinois, Northern Wisconsin. Canada, we're on a Canadian cable system. And this year, brand new, we are also covering this great state of Alaska.
Oh, really?
We're going to be all over Alaska this year, too. So, you know, the North Woods, we're going to have it covered from ice fishing to bunny hunting, you name it.
All right, so we've talked about all these topics, all these subjects. What does Jimmy Gretzinger like best?
Boy, That's a good question.
Other than meeting all the people, because I truly enjoy that too. We go around the state and we meet a lot of different people.
That is probably the greatest part, is getting to meet new people from all over the state. But I would say right now for me, if I have a day off in the fall, I'm going to probably grab my bird dog and do some grouse and woodcock hunting. That for me right now has become one of my favorite things to do. I need the exercise for one, and two, it's just it's a social thing, it's fun. And when you're out there hunting with your own dog, a lot of guys that have bird dogs know this, it's almost like having your kid out there with you. And when they perform well, whether you make the shot or miss the shot, just to see that dog work and the instincts and the working with them all year long. So grouse and woodcock for me right now is probably number one. Deer hunting is still a lot of fun for me. I don't get as much time to do it as I used to. And right after, you know, the grouse and woodcock probably is that turkey season. That spring turkey season is awfully hard to beat. But in the fall, anytime I can be up north chasing whatever, you know, it's a good day.
Well, Jimmy, it's always a pleasure
always good
finding
to see
you, hooking up with you.
Here we are out in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly right. But that's what Michigan Outdoors TV is all about.
That's right.
That's what we're doing here at the Q1 Buck Bowl. So Jimmy Gretzinger, Michigan Outdoors TV, you know, check him out on PBS on Thursday nights. I'm Tim Hart, and you're watching the Q1 Buck Bowl. Well, what is the proper way to field dress a deer, especially if you want to take it to a taxidermist and get it mounted? You know, Mike, so many people out there, they just take that knife and they go all the way up, or they'll do a certain cut that really makes it hard for taxidermists.
Yeah, you know, it makes me cringe when I see that happen, especially if it's a great deer. But I've been out in the woods, Tim, and actually I've tried to be a gentleman hunter on occasions.
Hang on, a gentleman hunter? All right, come on.
I've actually walked up on a few people and I've caught them just looking at the deer, not knowing what to do. So pay attention to this segment.
And did you say, hey, I'm Big Buck, let me help you out? Or did you just walk past them?
No, I gutted them for them.
Okay, well that's good. All right, I had a chance to talk to Kevin Eves from Eves Taxidermy, and here's some tips on field dressing your deer. Time now in the Q1 Buck Poll to talk a little taxidermy with Kevin Eves from Eves Taxidermy here in Saginaw. And in particular, what we're going to talk about is what you should do when you're field dressing your deer and you want to take it to a taxidermist to get a mount. Kevin, welcome to the Q1 Buck Poll.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the common mistakes that people make when they're out in the field.
Well, the main thing is the cuts on the deer, elk, anything. Okay, a lot of times what'll happen is they'll cut like the armpits right out of it right here, and what happens is you can't. If they're there, we can sew them back on, but if not, we got to cut the form or get another cape. The main thing is to cut them right here at the knee. Okay. And cut it straight back down the leg right here. When you reach the body, you just go straight back. That way the brisket and the armpits are all intact. We can't, a lot of the newer forms these days, they're kind of offset, they're longer in the shoulder, so we need about every inch we can get for some of these.
So it's better really to have more cape that you could work with than less.
It's better to
try
cut
to
it
get
off
as much cape as you possibly can, bring it into the taxidermist.
Right, it's better we can cut it off what we don't need, but if it's not there, then nothing we can do about it.
Now, do you find that a lot of people also, when they're field dressing, that they'll cut and they'll bring that knife all the way up type of thing, or not really?
A few times, yeah. Like in the brisket here, it's not bad because we can sew that up. That's not. It's just a straight shot usually. That's not a big deal. The main thing is the armpits. Everything has to be attached. Like I say, you got to stay on the bottom of the leg. Elk, moose, it doesn't matter what, and cut it right here, right at the first joint right here. If you cut it up here, you're cutting half your armpit out, and it's not there.
Well, as an example, you've got an elk that, you know, the form is, you know, the proper size and everything, but you don't have enough cape to bring it down.
Right.
So what are you going to do then?
Well, you'd have to almost get another cape because a lot of times the horns sweep back a lot further on the elk. And I mean, there's times when we get the full cape and we have to actually chop the head down, bring it down a little bit, like an inch or so, just to bring the horns away from the wall because they sweep back so far. So there's not much you can do. You'd have to get another cape for it. And now you're talking more expense.
Or trim the mold. Could you do
can
that?
trim. Well, the problem is with elk, like deer, you can because the horns they don't sweep back so far.
Okay.
But with an elk, they sweep back so far that if you cut the form, unless you want the horns cut off, you're not gonna, you know, they'll hit the wall and it just won't work.
You know, one of the things too that, you know, if you're hunting that big trophy buck and you think you have a chance at it, maybe even go talk to your taxidermist ahead of time.
Yeah, come on in here. I mean, we can show you. We do it all the time. we don't charge anything to cape out deer, like in November, whatever, deer around here. People bring the whole deer in, and we don't charge anything. It takes 10 minutes for us to cape it out, and that way it's done properly. And then we always try to educate people on, where to make the cuts. And we're more than welcome to come on in, and before you go on your hunt,
all right,
stop in and.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
Kevin Eves here at Eves Taxidermy in Saginaw, talking about caping out your deer. And again, if you do it properly, then you're going to have a beautiful mount just like this one is here. I'm Tim Hart. You're watching the Q1 Buck Poll. All right, so great tips from Kevin Eves. Now it's time to look at some more big bucks here on the Q1 Buck Poll.
All right, let's start out with Elvis Luke's 9-pointer with an inside spread of 12.5 inches. His score of 35 comes from the South Mid-Michigan region from Parma. Then Rodney Church brings in a 7-pointer, the inside spread of 12.5 inches. Overall score of 33 3/4 inches from the South Mid-Michigan region from Horton. And then finally, Tom Decker bringing in an 8-pointer with an inside spread of 12 3/4 inches, the score of 33.5 points from South Mid-Michigan region from Jackson.
Well, let me tell you this. The one score you read from Rodney Church, he won the ATV last year. His whole family was at the Soaring Eagle, and we just had a wonderful time. And he said, it made my whole year.
I'll tell you what, he had a rootin' section. They were screaming and hollering, and they were into it.
All right, we've got all kinds of prizes. You can go online right now to q1buckpoll.com. Lastminutehuntingandfishing.com. We've got Dunham's North American Outfitters from Canada, a Saskatchewan whitetail hunt. All you have to do is go online, click the button, and get signed up. It's all free. All right, for Mike Big Buck Hoffner, I'm Tim Hart. Thanks for watching this week's edition of the Q1 Buck Poll. Remember, anytime you're out in the woods, make sure you're safe.
For the latest on Michigan hunting, pick up the current edition of Woods and Water News, Michigan's premier outdoor publication, available on newsstands or by subscription. Woods and Water News, proud sponsor of the Q1 Buck Poll.
Because Big Buck's off, you could tell us now. In this room, we are the kings. In the Branch Area Career Center, I know you guys got to bow down to him and all that type of stuff, but here, we are.
I take a lot of crap here
he's
all
medium.
the time.
He's medium at best.
I have no clout at all here.
Medium at
whatsoever.
best.
Even Daryl's nice to me. I'm not sure Nate. He sits over there. He's getting writing on the clipboard, so he's probably looking for the bloopers.
All right, now it's time to find out what the MSU Diagnostic Lab, what role do they play when the... Ready?
1-1.
Okay. Yeah. Ready to go, Big?
Yep.
And you're on your game today. Maybe it's because you've got your...
because I think I'm up 2-1, so...
Well, give it time. Let me tell you right now.